But first, you know, watching that game last night, Houston Texans over the Buffalo Bills 23-19. So first of all, I literally said on Wednesday's show, and I felt extremely validated as that game continued to play itself out, particularly in the second half, is if this game had been played on a Sunday, this game 100% would have been on if I were a bet man. I thought Houston +6 was Vegas giving you free money. I know Davis Mills was a starter. I know it's a short week, although I'd almost argue short week is an advantage for the underdog team, especially if they're playing at home, especially if they're playing with the number one defense in the NFL, which the Houston Texans have, and we'll show that in just a moment. And with the Buffalo Bills being a team that, let's just be honest, watching that last night for me, I have never seen a great quarterback. We're not talking about bad teams. We've seen bad teams that just can't get the job done. I've never seen a team with a great quarterback. A guy in Josh Allen, who I literally said on Monday's show, is, in my view, one of the 5 greatest talents at the position we've ever seen. Not one of the 5 greatest players at the quarterback position ever. Greatest player, greatest talent, 2 different things. Greatest player, that kind of goes into accomplishments and things of that nature. I've never seen a guy of that caliber in Josh Allen work with so little offensive talent around him since Tom Brady's final year with the New England Patriots in 2019, which was the first year actually that this show even existed. I remember when I was a 16-year-old little puppy in the podcasting, business, talking about Tom Brady working with an old Julian Edelman, and Gronk had retired, and I think they had an old Benjamin Watson on that team. Great man, great dude, but obviously as it was not the same player at that stage of his career. They had, I think, Mohamed Sanu on that team. I mean, it was just a cluster, of wide receivers, and the offensive line wasn't that good. The run game was non-existent. Belichick's defense was good first half of the year, second half of the year, not quite. And New England ends up getting bounced in round 1 by the Tennessee Titans. Now, ironically, that was the team coached by Mike Vrabel. Looks like the Buffalo Bills are pretty much dead for the AFC East with Mike Vrabel and the Patriots, who are going to end up winning it. Is that I feel like the Buffalo Bills are almost falling into a similar trap that the Kansas City Chiefs did a couple of years ago, where it's, I'm talking about in 2023 in particular, because the Chiefs are coming off a Super Bowl in 2022. They did so a year after trading Tyreek Hill, and it was, oh my gosh, they can win with any receivers in this group. And of course, they come back in 2023, and it's okay if Kelsey's great. That's really all that matters. We can just kind of put a group of guys that complement each other. A bunch of Jags, as Bill Parcells would say, just a guy. We can put a bunch of Jags around Patrick Mahomes, and it can work. We have Justin Watson and Marquez Valdes-Scantling and McCole Hardman, who they brought back later that year, and it'll work. And the Chiefs led the league in drops, and that was the most, even at least up until this year, it was the most vulnerable the Chiefs ever looked. Why was that the predicament they found themselves in? Because they took for granted the all-time quarterback talent that they had on their roster, just like the Patriots did at the end of the Brady era. It was the system. It was the Patriots way. No, Randy Moss, even though they didn't win any Super Bowls with Randy Moss played some part of that, and Gronk played some part of that, and Julian Edelman, when he was in his prime, played some part in that. Danny Amendola said it best. It was never the Patriot way. It was the Tom Brady way. And right now in Buffalo, it is the Josh Allen, that's it way. The fact that the Buffalo has even had a chance to win that game, to get down into, near the red zone with an opportunity to win the game off of the incredibly well-designed lateral play, hook and ladder play by Joe Brady on 4th and 27, is incredible when you consider the defense they were playing. And we have Houston's defensive numbers last night. They were utterly sensational against the Buffalo Bills. Best defense of football. 2 picks, 1 forced fumble, 3 takeaways, 8 sacks. It's the most sacks Josh Allen has taken in his career. 11 quarterback hits, 12 quarterback pressures, and you see right there at the bottom, they held the Buffalo Bills to 0 for 2 in the red zone. And I think what you saw last night is kind of a moment of clarity, kind of the moment of, okay, yes, we now know the Buffalo Bills are dead for the AFC East. Kind of like we sort of laid the Chiefs or AFC West streak to bed on Monday's show. We're doing the same with the Buffalo Bills. They are 2 games back in New England. And with the Patriots having the easy schedule that they have, I've said for a couple of weeks on the show, I would be disappointed if they don't finish 13-4 at this particular point in time. Like they have like 2 kind of hard games the rest of the way, like Baltimore and Buffalo, I guess, depending on where those 2 teams are at. And they've obviously beaten Buffalo in Buffalo. But that was kind of a moment where that's always been the strength of the Buffalo Bills, is obviously Josh Allen, but also their offensive line. got absolutely worked last night. I mean, you could talk from up and down the list. You talk about Will Anderson. You're talking about Danielle Hunter and Derek Barnett. Shout out Derek Barnett. Go Vols. Just that whole defensive line worked Buffalo's O-line all night long. Deion Dawkins had a rough night at the office. It was, if you're going to hang your hat on Josh Allen being Superman as the justification for you being a Super Bowl contender, and by no means am I saying the Bills cannot win the Super Bowl. I'm not. Anytime you have a quarterback of that caliber, an MVP type level quarterback, you're never out of it until you are literally mathematically eliminated or eliminated in the playoffs, literally. You're never out of it. But if your identity is he's spectacular, he's special, and you got to give him something. Whether it's the offensive line, again, got worked yesterday, and I've had rough moments at times this season, as talented as they are, as good of continuity as that line has, one of the most healthy offensive line they talked about in the broadcast over the last few years in the NFL. He's got to have the defense to back him up. And you see, the Houston Texans scored 23. And one of those, to be fair, did come on a Josh Allen's first interception, I should say. Houston getting points at the end of that drive. But Buffalo's defense still gave up a lot of yards, a lot of chunk plays. Houston ran the football effectively. I mean, Davis Mills, who can move, but Davis Mills at times looked more comfortable than Josh Allen. And the Texans' offensive line isn't supposed to be in the same league as the Buffalo Bills' offensive line. Why? Because Buffalo can't get any pressure. They tried to add Joey Bosa. They thought that would help. It hasn't. God bless him. He's not the same player he was when he first came into the league out of Ohio State, right? He's not even the best Bosa in his family, no disrespect. But it is a rough situation this Buffalo Bills team finds himself in today. And if you look at the playoff standings in the AFC, it's wild to think, right? Baltimore's out of the mix. Kansas City's out of the mix. As we see here today, Buffalo is the 6th seed. And I don't know if they'd fall to the 7 or if they weirdly fall, go up to the 5th, depending on what happens with the Chargers game or the Jags game, above them and beneath them. But they're in a rough spot because if you look at the rest of their schedule, they still play New England. They play Pittsburgh. That's never a tough game. That's at Pittsburgh. At Cleveland, the Browns are always frisky. They have one of the best defenses football at home. They still got to play the Eagles. So I am by no means saying the Bills can miss the playoffs. I don't think that's on the board for this team. And given the fact that, they've already had their bye, so that's off the table. They kind of get like a mini bye before their game against Pittsburgh, which scares me a little bit a couple of weeks from now. But if Josh Allen is not, B plus at worst, this team has no chance to go anywhere. Now, the good news is Josh Allen has been productive in the playoffs. The good news is when they've lost those games to the Kansas City Chiefs, Josh hasn't been good on the final drive of the last two matchups, and I've talked about that extensively on the show. I don't think that's gotten enough attention, but over the course of those games, he's been good. In some of those playoff games against the Ravens, against Denver, against, albeit Miami, Pittsburgh, he's been excellent. So it's not like Josh is some playoff choker. He's not like the James Harden of the NFL or something. He doesn't have the concerns of the postseason that Lamar Jackson, for example, has. But if he is not special, if he is not spectacular, if he is not, 6 touchdowns total, 3 rushing, 3 passing, we had on Sunday against Tampa Bay, that's kind of the extreme. But if he isn't closer to the spectrum of that than what he was last night because he had no time to throw, because receivers couldn't separate, I mean, it tells you a lot that Buffalo is, let's just keep it a buck, they're benching Keon Coleman. Keon Coleman wins back-to-back games in the span of 5 days, a healthy scratch for a team that has nothing at receiver. I know Khalil Shakir had over 100 yards. They brought back Gabe Davis. Gabe Davis is back. He had 1 catch. This team is really limited at that position. I thought Keon Coleman was going to take that big step this year. It just hasn't happened. Teams know if we can be able to manage James Cook, play straight man-to-man coverage, take these receivers out of games, Josh has to be with his legs, which he can do, but he'll sustain hits. You saw Josh. He took he injured his wrist a little bit. He took some time getting up at times, the most he's ever been sacked. Anytime you have a quarterback of that caliber, you're never out of the mix. Never. At the same time, it is hard to see a scenario because they're going to be on the road for the whole playoffs. It's hard to see a scenario in which, if the playoffs started today, they go to Indianapolis. It's hard for me to pick Daniel Jones in a playoff game over Josh Allen. It is. My gut tells me the Bills would win that game just on Allen's sheer greatness. Indoors, that helps as well. But then they would all likely go to 1 seed Denver against that defense, that pass rush. That could be a living nightmare for the Bills, and their season would probably end at Mile High, as if the playoffs, ended where they're at today with the Broncos being the 1 seed. And so this team has serious limitations. If not for Josh Allen, I'm not so sure the Buffalo Bills would not be one of the 5 or 6 worst teams in football. I mean, even from time to time, like a bad team in the AFC, the Miami Dolphins, they have moments. They'll have a game or two. It's like, oh, Tua's got it going. Jalen Waddle, and they're running the football. McDaniel's a smart offensive play caller. It feels like a coaching change is almost inevitable when the season comes to a close. Whether they're going to go with Joe Brady, whether they're going to pursue somebody else, in the coaching search after the season is over. But it feels like that. I keep saying on the show many times, or all the time when I talk about the Buffalo Bills, Sean McDermott is the NFL's version of Mark Jackson for my Golden State Warriors. Mark Jackson took over a mess, a disastrous franchise with some young talent, was able to develop that talent, was able to instill confidence in that group, win some playoff games, win some playoff series, or a playoff series, I should say, against Denver in 2013. But that some limitations in terms of his offensive philosophy, playing Steph, one-on-one pick and roll, that kind of thing, along with some disagreements with the front office. He gets fired. Steve Kerr comes in. The rest, as they say, is history. I don't think Buffalo necessarily needs the NFL's equivalent of a Steve Kerr. Sean McDermott can build a culture. He can get you out of Nowhereville, which is where the Buffalo Bills were for nearly 2 decades, from 1999 all the way to 2017. But he can't get you to the next level. And I think we've seen that year after year, and I think we're going to see it in the postseason. I think Buffalo's going to get in, and I think we'll see it in the postseason this year. Whether it's in round 1 or in round 2, I have a hard time seeing this team getting to the AFC Championship game, so that's where I'm at, the Buffalo Bills. And as for Houston, listen, that's a really big win for them. They're not going to run down Indianapolis for the division, but being able to come back and win that game against Jacksonville, you win kind of a closer than expected game against Tennessee, and then you beat the Buffalo Bills in an upset last night. Like that's 3 straight wins. Davis Mills comes in and does the job. That's what you want a backup to be able to do. You want him, in the case of CJ Stroud being out 3 games, can you get 2 of them? Well, he got 3 of them. So this is an absolute best case scenario for Houston. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.